There's a document buried in the German military archives. It's an after-action report from a Wehrmacht commander, December 1944, Bastogne, Belgium. His division has just sent the Americans a formal surrender demand. Surrounded, outnumbered 3-1, the 101st Airborne has no food, almost no ammunition, and no winter clothing. His men are waiting for the white flag. Instead, they get one word back. Oh, you know what? That story still gives me goosebumps. But here's the part that most people don't know. When that report reached German high command, a German general, Hassel von Manteuffel, read it, and according to his own memoirs, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, "As was to be expected." He already knew. The entire German high command already knew. After 3 campaigns fighting against the Screaming Eagles, they knew that the 101st Airborne would never quit. Today, we're going to find out exactly why, and we're going to hear it in the Germans' own words. The 101st Airborne Division was activated on August 16, 1942. At that point, American paratroopers as a concept were barely 2 years old. The Army was still figuring out whether they were even useful. The nearly disastrous German airborne operation onto Crete in 1941 didn't help. This entire doctrine was still experimental. But the selection process was not. To get into the 101st, you first had to volunteer. Nobody was drafted into the airborne. Then you had to pass a physical standard so demanding that we estimate roughly 2 out of every 3 volunteers were cut before they even touched a parachute. Think about what that filter creates. You don't get average soldiers. You don't even get good soldiers. You get men who chose the hardest path and then proved they belonged with the elite, right where they wanted to be. These survivors were sent to Camp Toccoa, Georgia, where they ran a mountain called Currahee. 3 miles up, 3 miles down, no excuses. The toughest part of airborne school these days is having to carry that canteen around in your cargo pocket all day. At least, that's what they did when I was in airborne school 20 years ago. Maybe they still do that. Drop a comment if you know. Currahee. The name Currahee is a Cherokee word. It means stands alone. What a prophetic motto. The Germans would spend the next 3 years learning exactly what that meant. Physical stamina, courage, individual initiative, that makes a powerful combination. They'll need it for the disastrous airborne drops in Normandy, the 101st baptism of fire. That reminds me, I need to do some cardio. June 5th, 1944, 11:30, 30 minutes to midnight, go time. 6,000 men of the 101st Airborne are packed into C-47 transport planes, crossing the English Channel in total darkness. Their primary objective, land in Normandy, secure the beach exits, and hold long enough for the seaborne troops to push inland. The plan was precise. Timetables and schedules were by the minute. The execution was chaos. A total disaster. German anti-aircraft fire began tearing through those beautiful formations of C-47s the second they hit the coast. Pilots took evasive action. Planes scattered. The result was one of the most disorganized airborne drops in military history. Men landed miles, tens of miles from their intended drop zones. Entire sticks of paratroopers were separated, but small groups of 2, 3, 4 soldiers found themselves deep in occupied France with no idea where they were or where their unit was. Here's the thing. For most armies, that's a catastrophe. For the 101st, it accidentally became their greatest weapon. German commanders had contingency plans for an organized airborne assault. Really good plans, actually. They had no plan for hundreds of independent, aggressive American soldiers appearing everywhere simultaneously, blowing bridges, cutting phone lines, killing sentries, attacking from directions that made no tactical sense. German General Wilhelm Falli was so confused by the reports flooding into his headquarters that he got into his staff car in the middle of the night to go investigate personally. And he never made it back. He was ambushed and killed by a mixed patrol of paratroopers within hours of the landings. A German divisional commander killed in a ditch before dawn on D-Day. All this was the 101st opening statement. The scattered drop that looked like a disaster had paralyzed the German response to the beach landings at the most critical moment. Historians credit it as a significant factor in why Utah Beach, the 101st assigned sector, had the lowest Allied casualty count of all 5 invasion beaches. D-Day was June 6th. For the 101st, the hard fighting had barely started. 4 days later, beginning June 10th, they were ordered to take the town called Carentan, a road junction, strategically vital. If the Germans held it, they could keep Utah and Omaha beaches separated and potentially drive a wedge between the entire Allied landing force. Defending Carentan was the German 6th Fallschirmjäger Regiment, elite paratroopers, the closest thing to the 101st counterpart. Their commander was Friedrich August von der Heydte, one of the most respected officers in the German Airborne, and for good reason. His unit truly was elite. He later wrote in a memoir, but we'll come back to what he said. The approach to Carentan ran through a causeway, later nicknamed Purple Heart Lane. 4 bridges, no cover, German machine guns pre-sighted on every inch of it. The 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment was ordered down that causeway on June 10th. They were cut to pieces. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Cole's battalion was pinned down for hours. Casualties were mounting. Artillery was unavailable. It was still early in the invasion. There was no flanking position. So Cole did something that hadn't been done in American warfare since World War I. He ordered a bayonet charge. 250 men across open ground into entrenched German positions, no covering fire, just screaming and steel. It was the only way. Like the men on Omaha Beach a couple days earlier, they understood, you stay here, you die here. Cole personally led it with a pistol. It broke the German line. The 101st had their toehold off the causeway of death. Carentan fell 2 days later. Colonel Cole was awarded the Medal of Honor for that charge. He never received it. He was killed by a sniper in Holland 3 months later. Now here's what von der Heydte, commander of the 6th German Parachute Regiment, wrote about the 101st after Carentan. He said, and these are his words from his post-war memoir, that his men had never encountered American soldiers who attacked with such fanatical aggression. He specifically noted that rather than retreating when isolated or outnumbered, the paratroopers seemed to become more dangerous. Von der Heydte rebuilt his regiment after Carentan. 3 months later, he encountered the 101st again in Holland. September 1944, Operation Market Garden. The plan? Only the largest airborne operation in military history. 3 Allied airborne divisions, 2 American, 1 British, dropped in a line across Holland to capture a series of bridges. opening a highway corridor, a highway that Field Marshal Montgomery, who was in charge of the operation, hoped would end the war by Christmas. The 101st section of that corridor was 15 miles long. It quickly became known as Hell's Highway. They weren't wrong. The 101st was responsible for holding a narrow road through hostile territory, both ends exposed, German counterattacks coming from every direction, supply convoys desperate to push through. If the corridor closed, the entire operation collapsed. For 9 days, the Germans threw everything they had at it. Panzer brigades, SS infantry, artillery barrages, those dreaded 88s. The 101st held at heavy cost. The battle around the town of Best, for example, saw 2 men earn the Medal of Honor in a single day. Neither survived to receive it, but that corridor stayed open. And Von der Heyte, the same commander from Carentan, who had rebuilt his 6th Parachute Regiment and was now fighting in Holland, filed another after-action report. His conclusion was the same as before. The 101st did not behave like units that expected to be relieved. They fought as though they were the last men between the enemy and something that mattered more than their own lives. He was right. They were. Airborne Professor here, an airborne infantry veteran with a PhD who loves to talk about elite soldiers who jump into battle from a perfectly good airplane. And if you enjoy learning more about airborne warfare, go ahead and bazooka that subscribe button. And also please like this episode so we can keep the memories of these paratroopers alive. Now, let's get back to the battle. December 16th, 1944. Germany launched the largest offensive of the entire war on the Western Front. 25 divisions, a massive thrust through the Ardennes forest, a region the Allies had considered a quiet rest zone for green troops to get acclimated to war. Yikes. The Battle of the Bulge had begun. The Germans smashed through the Allied lines and advanced rapidly. But to completely collapse their line, Germany needed one thing: the town of Bastogne, a critical road hub. Every major road in the region ran through it. Control Bastogne, and the offensive could drive ahead. Lose it, and the whole operation stalled. The 101st Airborne was rushed in, not to attack, but to hold. What followed was one of the most extraordinary sieges in history. The 101st arrived with no winter clothing, limited ammunition, no heavy armor, and within 48 hours, they were completely surrounded by 7 German divisions. Food ran out, medical supplies ran out, men wrapped their boots in burlap to fight frostbite, for crying out loud. Surgeons operated by flashlight. On December 22nd, 4 days into the siege, German General Heinrich Luttwitz sent a formal surrender demand to the Allied commander. General Anthony McAuliffe read it. He thought about it for a moment, then he wrote one word on a piece of paper: nuts. His staff had to explain to the German emissaries what it meant. We'll call it an old American expression, loosely translated, go to hell, but much more effective. But here's the moment that matters, and most documentaries skip over it. When that reply reached German High Command, General Hassel von Manteuffel, the commander of the 5th Panzer Army, the man directing the entire Bastogne operation, read it and reportedly said it was exactly what he expected. After 3 campaigns, the German High Command had stopped expecting the 101st to break. They had updated their assessments. The unit was categorized differently from the other American divisions, as one that required complete destruction to neutralize. because it would not yield under any other circumstances. That is not admiration. That is military fear. On Christmas morning, 1944, the Germans made their final major assault on Bastogne. 18 Panther tanks, an infantry regiment, the 101st, with almost no anti-tank weapons remaining, stopped them cold. Soon, Patton's Third Army broke through and relieved the town. Of the 18 Panthers that day that attacked on Christmas morning, exactly 3 made it back to German lines. After the war, American military historians interviewed captured German officers extensively. The transcripts are all in the National Archives. What they said about the 101st is consistent across dozens of separate interviews. It wasn't just that the Screaming Eagles were tactically skilled. It wasn't just that they were aggressive. It wasn't just that they took objectives other units couldn't reach. It was the psychological effect. German soldiers who had faced the 101st before and survived reportedly became less effective the second time they encountered Patch. Morale degraded faster. Resistance collapsed sooner. The symbol itself had become a weapon. The 101st Airborne Division fought in combat for 214 days. They never once surrendered a position they had been ordered to hold. 214 days. Not once. By the end of the war, it wasn't just a record. It was a reputation. And reputations in warfare, through fear, are an ultimate force multiplier. That's elite. The Germans feared the 101st Airborne not because of any single battle, not because of one man's bayonet charge, not for one defiant word. They feared them because they fought them at Carentan, fought them again in Holland, surrounded them in Bastogne, and the answer was always the same. The Germans recognized the pattern. They saw that culture of fierce determination that seemed inexhaustible. It was that, as was to be expected, that's what fear looks like in a military report. Leave a comment. What do you think made the 101st different? Was it the training? The leadership? Maybe something else? And subscribe if you like stories like this about the airborne. Remember to keep your feet together. See you on the next battlefield. As the Pathfinders say, Semper Primus.